Ukraine is one of the largest countries in Europe by area and population. It declared independence in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Since then, Ukraine has been actively developing as a peaceful, democratic, European-focused country, implementing reforms and seeking to join the European Union. However, the strict totalitarian Russia has always sought to capture and subjugate freedom like Ukraine, just as it always did in the past centuries during the Russian Empire and later on in the communist Soviet Union times. In February 2014, the Ukrainian people drove out the pro-Russian authoritarian president, Viktor Yanukovych, after large-scale protests. Russia sheltered him and forcibly annexed the Crimean Peninsula, and then launched separatist insurgencies in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of eastern Ukraine. For a long period of 8 years, Russia's covert hybrid war against Ukraine continued. A new, terrible, and large-scale war began on the European continent on the 24th of February 2022. Russia's unprovoked full-scale armed invasion of neighboring peaceful Ukraine has become the largest military conflict in the world since the Second World War. Russia used the entire arsenal of modern weapons, except for weapons of mass destruction. The economic consequences of the war were felt by many countries far beyond the theater of battle. The Russian military has been committing war crimes on a massive scale, occupying Ukrainian lands, towns, and villages, murdering and raping civilians, destroying housing and digital infrastructure, and deporting Ukrainian kids. Leading democracies, including the United States and the EU, have supported Ukraine and sided with the light and good, freedom, and European values. On the other side are those who support darkness and evil, Russian despotism of the worst kind. Large-scale fighting is taking place in all three natural elements, at sea, in the sky, and on land. Ukraine's military intelligence, whose symbol is an owl with a sword pointed at the center of Imperial Russia, has become a key element of armed resistance to aggression. The emblem of the defense intelligence of Ukraine bears the Latin slogan, Sapiens Dominabitur Astris, the wise will rule over the stars.
The term ace comes from the French word as, meaning the highest playing card in a deck, and bears a figurative meaning of skilled or brave. This term was coined in France during World War I as a name for the best frontline pilots, masters of aerial combat. Back then, a pilot who had hit 5 or more enemy warplanes would be called an ace. During World War II, pilots from various armies began adorning the fuselages of their planes with images of aces, especially those of spades, diamonds, or hearts. This tradition is still there in modern combat air forces. To mark one's plane with such an image is to consider oneself a flying ace and to openly demonstrate it. It was the biggest aerial invasion in the world. There were combat planes and helicopters, cruise and ballistic missiles, combat and reconnaissance drones.
Not every pilot could believe that this was not a drill, that everything was happening for real.
How did our pilots and air defense forces clear Ukrainian skies from enemy combat aircrafts?
Key thing is they've lost air superiority and can't operate freely over our territory anymore.
What has our military intelligence learned from captured enemy aviators, and how many of our soldiers have they been exchanged for?
I spoke to every single senior officer personally.
Downed Russian aviators, from an evac helicopter navigator to second-in-command officers of aviation regiments, how have they been prepared for the invasion?
We thought it would probably go very fast, probably. 3 days? 3 days, maybe a week.
What kind of Western combat planes will Ukraine receive, and when?
The very first Ukrainian F-16 plane will be the strongest signal from the world that Russia will only lose from its aggression.
February the 24th, 2022, the cold, dark and quiet Ukrainian sky suddenly exploded with sirens and devastating blasts. As soon as the broadcasting of dictator Putin's 30-minute cannibalistic speech on the beginning of the Great War finished at 5 a.m., the Russians started it exactly the way the Ukrainian and Western intelligences had predicted, with mass air raids. Their main goal was to eliminate Ukraine's capability of air resistance before any could take place. First, to gain superiority, and then complete dominance in the air before the land operation.
In the first minutes, hours of the invasion, Russia did administer missile and bomb strikes on our main home airfields, air defense and radio technical troops units locations. However, the efficiency of these strikes didn't meet the goals set for the Russian aerospace forces, so to speak.
Indeed, the Russians' preparations for the large-scale war were especially impressive in their Air Force component. They had been redeploying increasingly more combat helicopters and planes to military airfields of annexed Crimea in the south, Belarus in the north, and Russia in the east, right before the invasion. All the tech was clearly visible to our Western allies' reconnaissance satellites.
There were over 500 latest Mark planes such as Su-30SM, Su-35S, Su-34, and a number of modernized Su-25 attack planes, and Su-24M, which they would use last. All this was scattered and deployed on over 40 airfields. On a European scale, this is most similar to World War II. Europe had seen nothing of the kind since then.
It was crucial for Ukrainian air forces with a much smaller combat potential to preserve it in the first few hours and days of war. Just 2 weeks after the invasion began, the Russians bragged arrogantly about destroying our air defense almost entirely.
90% of Ukrainian military airfields, which housed most of combat air power, have been incapacitated.
But it didn't happen as expected, and forewarned is forearmed. Having received accurate information on the scale of the airstrike from the military intelligence just in time, our air defenders managed to scatter the planes and anti-aircraft missile systems before it was too late.
So, in reality, they've hit around 20% of what they wanted to. This was what hampered their absolute dominance in the air. And the fact that they failed to destroy most anti-aircraft missile systems reduced their dominance in plane class and number to 0. To cruise command for takeoff. We were ordered to draw out of the strike's way. We took off, retreated to the duty area, and then received a command to retreat to the tactical airfield. Almost all the planes that were on duty were being drawn out because our ground defense started working. This is the target. Finnick, the target is in your zone. Locate and report. Target's in the zone. Roger. Probability of kill? High probability. Permission to work granted. We didn't fire all the time from one spot. Everybody was in the standby mode, and at a specific moment, when there was guaranteed information on enemy aviation flight, we'd activate our tech and fire, so we did everything in a minimal amount of time.
The air forces of Ukraine are the most technological and thus the most expensive armed service. They comprise of 3 branches: combat and transport aviation, air defense missile troops, and radio technical troops. Together, they are tightly connected and form the Joint Combat Air Defense System.
We were able to preserve our aerial target location control system and warbirds as well. Besides, our pilots being quite experienced helped us counteract more effectively henceforth.
To locate enemy aerial targets in time, or as far as possible from potential impact areas, is the first and foremost tactical mission. It has been carried out by our Sky Eyes and Ears, the radio technical troops.
The relevant elements received command to locate all types of targets. Operating modes and radar equipment used for reconnaissance and intelligence would change accordingly.
Radio interception of Russian pilots showed that the enemy was calm, even cocky. The airbase of the 40th Brigade of Tactical Aviation in Valsivkiv, which was safeguarding the capital city, was a top priority target for pilots with codenames Samba, 023, Priliv and Rapper.
Samba, you asking of the target you worked on? Yes. My marks disappeared after launches. Dash Samba, I see someone, azimuth 183 from Rapper, distance 182 near Vasilkiv. 023 to the left, course 150, target ahead, distance 160.
But very soon, the much-praised enemy aces started experiencing the destructive force of our anti-aircraft missile system. Enemy planes and helicopters that attacked Ukrainian cities in packs started getting hit by our infantrymen's portable air defense systems. C-300 and Buck-M anti-aircraft missile systems. And also by our combat pilots, who had to overcome the psychological barrier of the first air battles, since they'd never fought against enemy aircraft before.
They report target acquisition. You give them command to hit. Not every pilot believed that this was not a drill, that this was happening for real, that we really had to fight to protect Ukraine.
As soon as enemy packs started facing losses in the air, their fighting enthusiasm vanished. The much-praised aces started pulling out of dogfights despite outnumbering us significantly.
Who's been hit? 10. Do you copy? I see him. He's been hit. I don't know who it is, but they're on fire right before me. 10. We should pull out. Pull out, everyone. It's on fire. It's all on fire. Damn it. We developed different ways of carrying out air battles and maneuvers. And one of such ways is deceiving the enemy. One of the planes is a demonstrational target, which leads the enemy plane to our strike group. We've even had situations where a pair of planes would bind a whole enemy flight or more in combat, and they would refuse to keep fighting. We'd hit them. Sometimes they'd hit us. There has been everything. We've even had almost close maneuvering air combat.
Ближні маневрені бої були навіть. Подбили. Два самолета упало. Да, падает. Упало два самолета.
We've even had situations where a pair of planes would bind a whole enemy flight or more in combat, and they would refuse to keep fighting. We'd hit them. Sometimes they'd hit us. There has been everything. We've even had almost close maneuvering air combat.
This radio interception from May 2022 shows the automatic voice information system of an enemy plane, informing the pilot about an engine fire after a missile hit.
Aircraft number 16. Fire in the left engine. Use an extinguisher. Which course? Which course? Aircraft number 16. I'm hit. Aircraft number 16. Course. Fire in the right engine. Aircraft number 16. Remote control system failure. Shut up. We jumping on 2? On 3? Where? Straight ahead? Where, Pasha? Distance to the turn is 30. It's okay. It's okay. Screams. Pull it.
This is a unique video of the ejection of one of the downed enemy aces, captured by the camera on his helmet. He survived, but many others weren't as lucky.
RASF is the acronym for the Russian Aerospace Forces. It's like they were able or were planning to wage Star Wars. However, Russian invasion in Ukraine has literally made their aviation more down to earth. Just according to the General Staff's official information, over 300 enemy warbirds, like this Su-25 strike fighter with the side number RF 91961, have been shot down. This one met its end in the Kiev Oblast on March 2nd.
Heroic and sometimes self-sacrificing actions of our Downed pilots in the air above the capital and the enemy planes downed by them despite exceeding us in both numbers and quality led to the emergence of a collective character, the Ghost of Kiev.
He's an avenger who brings death to his enemies. He's elusive, appears out of nowhere, completes his mission, kills enemies, and then vanishes into thin air. We're proud to wear this chevron and put this image on our planes.
The first downed Russian ace that was taken captive was Major Alexander Krasnoyartsev, one of two pilots of the Su-34 fighter bomber that catapulted from their falling plane over Chernihiv on March 5, 2022. Alexander Krasnoyartsev Vasilyovich was born in 1986 in Orenburg, lives in Chelyabinsk, is a major first-class pilot, carried out 3 operational flights in Ukraine airspace from Sechecha Tactical Airfield in the Dubrovka region of Bryansk Oblast, had been downed over Chernihiv on March 5th and taken captive. People's excitement at seeing Krasnoyartsev's plane get hit was as understandable as was the hatred for the escapees. By that time, Russian aviation had been razing Chernihiv to the ground for 2 weeks. These are the remains of Krasnoyartsev's plane, which fell directly on a private residence, destroying it completely. The residence survived by sheer miracle. The other pilot, the navigator, Major Krivalopov, was killed by the fall.
Летчик, который бьет город Чернигов. Вот. Путин, где твой русский мир? Сюда его давай.
Krasnoyartsev, the pilot in command, landed on the yard of the neighboring house. Alive, though wounded, he was captured by Chernihiv Defense Forces.
But you didn't know you were going to bomb a peaceful city? They don't tell us anything. You had a task. Where's your map? Coordinates, targets, the number of bombs you've dropped on the peaceful Chernihiv? It's my first time here. You're just lucky the civilians didn't tear you to pieces. Type of plane? Side number? 24.
Captivity actually saved Krasnoyartsev from being lynched by the citizens of Chernihiv, since a little earlier he had shot a civilian who was brave enough to chase him.
I shot the person running after me.
It wasn't his first time killing civilians in unjust wars, especially by bombing from his plane. In Syria, he had done some carpet bombing of cities, and for that he had been honored to pose for a picture with bloody dictators Putin and Assad. Here he is on the far right, next to these murderous tyrants.
At the beginning of the war, the Russians also tried bombing our cities and convoys. For instance, there were bombings of Chernihiv and a few other cities, but they faced losses very soon, as our anti-aircraft missile system still stood.
These burning remains in the field used to be another Russian plane, a multi-role fighter Su-30SM. Just like this, in the open field, wearing an orange flying suit and holding his hands behind his head, flight leader Oleksiy Polovensky meets our defenders.
I am a flight leader. What kind? Air flight. Unit, minus 59,882. Where are you from? You mean where I was born? Far East. Polovensky is a major, commander of the aviation squadron of the 43rd Separate Naval Assault Aviation Regiment in Saki, AR of Crimea. His relatives live in Kremenchuk, Poltava Oblast, and his wife's relatives live in Kharkiv. He was downed and captured in Mykolaiv Oblast on March 5, 2022. Captain, introduce yourself. Oleksiy Kozlov, downed aviator of Aerospace Forces of the Armed Forces of RF. Date of birth? March 2nd, 1982. Position? Squad Navigator. Unit number? 59,882. Where are you from? Smolensk. Where do you live? Registration? Crimea. Saki. Kozlov Olek, born in 1982 and is a captain and a squad navigator of the 43rd Separate Naval Assault Aviation Regiment in Saki, AR of Crimea. His Su-30SM was downed and he and his pilot-in-command Major Polovensky were captured in Mykolaiv Oblast on March 5, 2022. In fact, one of the tasks of naval aviation of the occupied Crimea was hunting our anti-aircraft missile systems in the south. With Kherson taken, the enemy was advancing on Mykolaiv. Taking the city of shipwrights would open the landway to Odessa for the aggressors. The further occupants' plan was assault landing on our sea capital. My aviation regiment got a task about a planned amphibious assault landing from the naval fleet on the territory of Ukraine. Our commanders kept telling us that Ukraine's air defense was weak, that everything was old and nothing worked. Our commanders kept telling us that Ukraine's air defense was weak, that everything was old and nothing worked. So go there, invade the territory. There's nothing to worry about.
There was a third downed Russian aviator at the press conference, Maxim Kreshto. His distinctive features were high intelligence, clarity of thought, and, as it seemed, understanding of guilt for his actions. Keep him in mind.
I did my third combat flight on March 6, 2022. There was 4 tons of general-purpose bombs on board. During the mission, I realized that bombing targets weren't military objects, they were residential buildings and civilians. But I obeyed the crimeful order.
On March the 6th, 2022, a Su-34 fighter bomber dropped 8 bombs on Kharkiv television tower. But as they were exploding on the ground, our interceptor missiles were already on their way to meet the bomber. A bright flash in the dusky skies over Kharkiv marked the successful hit. The pilots managed to jump out, navigator Nurin died, and the commander, Narkish Kripsto, was captured by our National Guard the next day on March 7th.
Your rank? Lieutenant Colonel. Position? Which regiment? Aviation Regiment. How many planes does the regiment have? 24. Krzysztof Maxim Suryovich was born in 1981 in Novosolovo village in Krasnoyarsk Krai. He's a lieutenant colonel and regimental adjutant of the 47th Bomber Aviation Regiment, Voronezh, Baltimore Airfield, of the 105th Mixed Aviation Division of the 6th Army of Aerospace Forces of the Armed Forces of RF, was downed and captured on March 7, 2022 in Kharkiv. This video from a local Kursk TV channel Sime, filmed before the war, features a story about the family of pilot Sergei Kozik, then Major.
Видеоархив новым эпизодом воссоединения семьи. Дочурка Света считала дни до возвращения своего героя. В разлуке сложно, но такова работа, убежден летчик.
От этого никуда не уйдешь.
On March 13, 2022, in a field near Oskil village in Izium Rayon of Kharkiv Oblast, the remnants of his Su-30SM fighter, struck by our Buk anti-aircraft missile system, were burning down.
Last name? Kozik. First name, patronymic. Date of birth, January 5th, 1981. Rank, Lieutenant Colonel. Unit, 45,119. Kozik was born in 1981 in Dresden. Lieutenant Colonel, Regimental Adjutant of the 14th Fighter Wing of the 105th Mixed Aviation Division of the 6th Army of Aerospace Forces of the Armed Forces of RF. Was downed and captured on March 23rd near Oskil village of Izium Rayon of Kharkiv Oblast. After escaping the plane, he had been wandering the woods for 10 days and had had his feet frostbitten before he got caught. I had my limbs frostbitten, especially feet. They had to partially amputate my great toes.
When the captive Cossack was shown the consequences of the air bombing of Saltivka, residential microrayon in Kharkiv, some of the passers-by couldn't contain their rage.
You bastard. Do you even know why you came here in the first place? No. You don't know? Are you an idiot or what? You came, but you don't know why you're here? To murder children, to rape? Tell me, what did we ever do to you? Explain, because I have trouble hearing. Tell me, why did you come? What was your goal here? What did I personally do to you? Look, what you've done to us. What brought you here, you monster?
On April the 4th, a Su-35 fighter piloted by Major Malov was shot down from 9,000 meters above the ground by an anti-aircraft missile from the C-300 system in the same area.
How many combat flights have you done? 15. What? No. Then what? Speak, or I'm gonna shoot you in the knee from your own rifle. Where are you from? Tahanro. Rank, last name? Major Malov Sergei Volodymyrovich. Unit number? 45,121. Malov was born in 1987 in Tahanro of Rostov Oblast, lives in Chalma village of Pryazin, National Rayon of the Republic of Karelia. He's a major and a flight commander of the 159th Bomber Aviation Regiment. Was shot down and captured on April 4th, 2022 near Borova of Izium Rayon of Kharkiv Oblast. Krishtop, Kozik, and Malov, 3 top-ranking officers of command staff from 3 different aviation regiments belonging to the 105th Mixed Aviation Division of Aerospace Forces of RF, were captured in Kharkiv Oblast in the spring of 2022 in a row. At the beginning of this war, Russians thought it was going to be a walk in the park. Even easier than Syria, which had no air defense whatsoever. That's why top-ranking officers hurried ahead in order to get the medals and money reward, shoving younger soldiers aside. But what they got instead of money was captivity or death.
Russia's top-ranking officer aviators became not only the source of important information for Ukrainian military intelligence, but also a valuable exchange resource.
We benefited greatly from them because we were able to exchange them for a great number of our own prisoners of war. There were a few aviators from top positions in the aerospace forces of Russian Federation that could provide us with objective information on the present state of their divisions. This information was priceless for us.
Lieutenant Colonel Kreistop, Regimental Adjutant of the 47th Bomber Aviation Regiment that participated in the March the 11th, 2022 press conference, was one of the officers the Chief of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine talked to personally.
Have you participated in combat actions previously? Yes. Where? When? In Syria. What tasks did you carry out there? I piloted Su-34 and carried out missions to strike enemy targets. In September 2015, ignoring the rules of international law, Russia began a military operation in Syria, which is Moscow's closest ally in the Near East. Technically, it started by request of the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, that had been waging a brutal civil war against his own people, that had turned against the tyrant. Russian aviation used Syria as a firing ground, testing various types of weapon, zaring whole Syrian cities to the ground, and killing thousands of civilians. Aviation operated on middle and high altitudes, above the upper limit of the engagement range of man-portable air defense systems. So when Russian aircrafts would get shot down, it could be because of lowering altitude, friendly fire, and engagement of Turkish fighters. Above the upper limit of the engagement range of man-portable air defense systems. So when Russian aircrafts would get shot down, it could be because of lowering altitude, friendly fire, and engagement of Turkish fighters. That only happened once.
Indeed, on November the 14th, 2015, in Latakia, a Syrian Governorate, a Turkish F-16 fighter, shot down one of the two Russian Su-24 bombers, which violated the airspace of neighboring Turkey and ignored the warning about the unacceptability of such flights. One of the two Russian pilots died. It also became evident that Russian aces were helpless in the face of actual powerful air defense.
How would you rate Ukrainian air defense's work? I guess, since you're here, you must have made a rather close acquaintance with it. It's quite worthy. The air defense's work affected me personally, and many of those I used to serve and fly with. This war has demonstrated that with strong, disperse and depth air defense, aviation efforts are very limited. Let's put it that way. Yes.
Such personal talks with the captive enemy top-rank officer aviators helped the Chief of Defense Intelligence of Ukraine get a lot of useful information.
Such personal talks with the captive enemy top-rank officer aviators helped the Chief of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine get a lot of useful information. That's why I conducted those talks. What can I say? The professional level of these pilots and navigators was very high. Huge amount of flying hours, actual bombing experience from Syria, significant experience and varied kinds of training. But the simple problem was the lack of personnel. The number of qualified pilots is very limited. Young graduates are quite many, but their professional level is next to nothing.
Достатня, в принципі, але фаховий рівень майже нульовий. Кожен з цих високоякісних пілотів вказав...
All the qualified pilots I've talked to have cited this problem. This explained why commanders piloted the planes, because efficient pilots were few.
Підготовлених пілотів одиниці.
The fact that the Russian army faces a lack of qualified combat aviators is illustrated by the story of the next captive, a retired Major Andrei Fedorchukov.
Major, Division, Private Military Company. Division, Private Military Company. Wagner? I don't know the name. There are no documents. They say there's another such company. Wagner? I don't know the name. There are no documents. They say there's another such company. Who's your direct commander? We don't have one. Who gave you the combat task? We receive them through the Ministry of Defense, through military men. Fedorchukov, born in Vladivostok. He's a retired major and a pilot of the Su-25 strike fighter. Was recruited by Wagner PMC in June 2022. Conducted combat flights from Milyarovo Airfield in Rostov Oblast. Was shot down and captured on June 18, 2022. His strike fighter had been shot down in June 2022 near Svitlodarsk by a warrior from our 72nd Brigade. As it turned out, the reserve Major Fedorchukov had been flying with Wagner PMC. Which means, after suffering significant losses in the air among regular pilots, aviation started recruiting retirees. Purely for money, 205,000 rubles was mercenary Fedorchukov's monthly salary. How many pilots like you are there? 3 people at the moment. In the PMC? Yes. When did you retire from the Army? I retired in 2015, but had been decommissioned in 2009. What position did you retire from? Deputy Wing Commander.
Military pilots are the most valuable battle units in any army in the world. Governments invest years of training and tons of money in teaching them to fly and fight in the air in modern, expensive aircraft. That's why they will always try to retrieve the surviving pilot from enemy territory after a crash. One such evacuation raid to find a crashed Russian pilot was carried out near Volnovakha at the beginning of March by these two helicopter pilots, Ryutin and Simikin. But their helicopter was shot down as well, and they were captured.
You, with the hood, where are you from? Altai Krai. Altai Krai? What's your name? Anatoly Semikin. Repeat.
The heavily wounded enemy pilots were provided medical assistance according to the Geneva Convention.
I am Captain Semikin, Senior Salvage Officer of the 31st Fighter Wing in Milyarovo. I've been shot down near Volnovakha on March 4th while carrying out the search mission. Semikin Anatoly Volodymyrovich was born in 1986 in Altai Krai, is a captain and a helicopter pilot. Was shot down and captured near Volnovakha in Donetsk Oblast while on a mission to retrieve another downed fighter pilot.
Simikin, Peretyukov, Kozlov, Olovensky, Krasnoyartsev, Malov, Kosaik, Kraishtok are just those pilots that were lucky to survive. Much more of them were killed in the Ukrainian sky, on land, and some even in the water.
9 мая, время 8:07. На Киевском водохранилище выявлен пилот. Старший лейтенант Мякишев, что-то такое. По всей видимости, плавает с первых дней войны.
Senior Lieutenant Myankishev died in the cold waters of Dnipro River after catapulting from the shot-down Mi-24 helicopter on the first day of the invasion.
Парашют. Да. Самолет чей хоть? Русский. Русский?
Утопить того.
Remember that enemy aviation suffered fundamental losses in the first days to months of war, when all our air defense had was old Soviet anti-aircraft missile systems, not modern Western tech. In those conditions, our air defenders demonstrated miracles of efficiency.
Завдяки нашому патріотизму.
Thanks to our patriotism and the greatest will to win, because this is our land and we have things to lose, and thanks to our engineering technicians have been repairing all the damaged tech and fighting the enemy that exceeded us in strength.
І бились з переважаючими силами противника.
And by the end of March we'd forced them out of the airspace of most of Ukrainian territory.
Більшої частини України.
In mid-October 2022, Russia, having gained no superiority, let alone dominance in Ukrainian skies, started a new phase of war in the air. They decided to revisit the Syrian experience of razing peaceful cities to the ground. But this time, instead of air bombs, it was missiles and drones. The occupants' new commander-in-chief, Serhiy Surovikin, became its strategist. He was in charge of the aerospace forces.
Surovikin was born in 1966 in Novosibirsk, is the hero of RF and general of the army. For his incredible cruelty, he got the nicknames General Armageddon and Syrian Butcher. After the mutiny of Wagner PMC on June 24, 2023, he fell from grace due to his close relations with Yevhen Prigozhin and was soon fired from the position of the commander of the aerospace forces of Russia.
Mass strikes on civilian infrastructure, particularly energy infrastructure, with long-range aviation missiles of the aerospace forces of the RF and Iranian Shahed attack drones were meant to plunge Ukraine into cold darkness of the coming winter.
One special feature of Sheikh drones is carrying a 40-kilo payload, which is quite a lot. A feature of construction makes its heat trace almost invisible, and it's difficult to aim with a man-portable air defense system. However, it's rather loud, which is its downside. They're easy to hit with a machine gun by day. At night we can hear them, but not see. That's the problem. Got it. The enemy uses air-launched cruise missiles, coming from a great distance. If we're talking about Tu-95 and Tu-160, usually that means thousands of kilometers from the launch area to the target. There are no new ways of taking them down but air defense systems and fighters. Unfortunately, the world has no alternatives to offer.
In response to this missile and drone terror, our partners started providing Ukraine with modern Western anti-aircraft systems, such as Norwegian NASAMS, German IRIS-Ts, French-Italian SAMP-Ts, and finally, American Patriots.
The NASAMS system started working the very next morning after coming in, same with IRIS-T. We demonstrated the actual efficiency level of all foreign anti-aircraft missile systems here, in Ukraine. Before that, they had only ever had theoretical experience of using them, like in fire exercises. Here, having had over 100 targets shot down by each system, one has a word or two to say. Russian long-range strategic aviation planes, varying from turboprop Tu-95 to more modern modifications of Tu-22 and latest Tu-160, pose the biggest threat to Ukraine. Able to carry nuclear explosives, they fire their deadly missiles from Russian territory without entering zones of action of our air defense systems. Ironically, Ukraine once had this kind of formidable, powerful aviation, but the nuclear disarmament turned it into nothing but museum exhibits.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Viktor Savchenko rose to the position of Deputy Commander of the 185th Guards Heavy Bombardment Aviation Regiment and retired from military service in 2002. Savchenko flew a lot on such Tu-22 M3s. In the 80s, he dropped bombs in Afghanistan, and in the 90s, he launched missiles at exercises, the same X-22, X-555, X-101 missiles that we gave, along with the planes to Russia, which is now shelling Ukraine and its native Poltava with them.
Sirens are blaring again. It's like this El Mort every day. The crew know precisely where they send the missiles to. Their destructive power is tremendous, 950 kilos in TNT equivalent. Hence the scale of devastation and suffering they bring. I can confirm that the crew of such a plane know 100% well what they do. Russian combat aviators, officers, that take their seats in long-range and strategic aviation planes, this Tu-95 has 7 of those, are actual war criminals. Despite not seeing it with their own eyes, they fully understand how much destruction, death, and suffering their missiles carry. For subjects like them, there are special spots in hell. I have visual on the left, countdown, -21 ST. 22nd, good morning. Roof, we're at 9,400 and at your frequency. -01 ready to fire 1. Turning right, 10 degrees. 02 ready to file 2. Finishing right, turn 10 degrees. -03 ready to fire 2. I'm a beam of you, slightly to the back. In the air, hunting these missile carriers is impossible. Therefore, as I said, they make launches from areas up to 1,000 and more kilometers away.
If we can't get to these long-range bombers in the air, we have to get them on land. This decision was made by the military intelligence, and in December 2022, 2 brilliant operations were conducted. On the night of December the 5th, Dyaghilevo military airbase in Ryazan Oblast was attacked by an old Soviet Tu-141 strike drone carrying explosives. The strike caused significant damage to a Tu-95 and a Tu-22 strategic bomber, and also a filling truck. The photo shows giant pools of blood around it. 6 Russian soldiers died and 11 were wounded. Soon after that, another Russian long-range aviation airbase in Enkhels of Saratov Oblast got hit by a strike. Surveillance cameras in the nearby microrayon filmed the explosion. 2 Tu-95 missile carriers were damaged. Both Dyaghilevo and Enkhels are more than 500 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. It was the first time we reached this far. In the summer of 2023, long-range strikes of Ukrainian various type drones on airfields in Russia, as well as targets in Moscow, almost became an everyday thing. Quite soon, quantity became quality. On August the 19th, on Solsty Air Base, located 650 kilometers away from our border, a Tu-22M3 strategic bomber was hit and burnt to the ground. This is backed up by photos as well as satellite images. Moreover, 2 more of these missile carriers were damaged on Tchaikovka Air Base in Kalua Oblast. All in all, long-range enemy aviation lost 2 strategic bombers completely, and 2 more were significantly damaged within 3 days in mid-August.
These drones are small, something like this. I'm saying this openly because from what we know, Russian investigating authorities have figured out where we've been launching them from, so there's no use in concealing it.
Most of May 2023, Kiev and other big cities would see nightly brutal mass strikes by ballistic and cruise missiles from Russian aggressors. On May the 16th, the night sky over the capital of Ukraine was alight with explosions and air defense missile launches and resembled some sci-fi or Star Wars shooting range. It was then that American patriots were able to shoot down Russia's cutting-edge hypersonic X-47 Kinzhal missiles.
Day to day and month to month, our team has been working on getting proper air defense. We have been told that getting Patriots wasn't possible, but now, here they are. And they're the only thing we will provide for Ukraine.
That Saturday, May 13th, was a real rainy day for Russian combat aviation. Bryansk Oblast witnessed a helicopter plane fall. A group of 3 Mi-8 helicopters and 2 Su-34 and Su-35 planes were shot down simultaneously over Russian territory. All pilots died.
Russia has a significant over Ukraine in both quantity and quality of military aircrafts, and changing this, gaining the upper hand quickly is absolutely impossible. But speaking about the development of our air defense, we're moving forward. The number of air defense systems is growing.
But the key thing for defending our sky and liberating our lands is receiving new modern Western aircrafts. The air unit of the Defense Intelligence pioneered in this matter.
Тривали перемовини з американською стороною про покупку даного вертольота.
We've been in talks to buy this helicopter because, as you know, our partners wouldn't provide us with these, so we had to buy it ourselves.
Ми вимушені були купити його самі.
The legendary American MH-60 helicopter, the Black Hawk, is the first example of foreign military aviation now active in service for defense and security forces, namely the Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. It can carry cargo, evacuate the wounded, drop special op groups, and above all, support land action with fire from the air.
It's no coincidence that the commander of the Air Unit of Defense Intelligence chose the codename Maestro. He has the skill and love not only for fighting and flying, but also for guitar playing and singing. Almost like the pilot Captain Titarenko, the main character of Only Old Men Are Going Into Battle movie classic, played by the renowned Ukrainian actor Leonid Baikov. As Maestro explains, while the Russians cover the land forces action with 4+ generation aircrafts like Su-30, Su-34 and Su-35, our planes of earlier modifications will have a tough time in the air.
They won't let us get as close to them as 3 times the distance of MiG-29, destroying anything attempting to approach. This is why we need to transfer to aircrafts that, if not equal to theirs, at least don't lag behind them too far.
Simply put, the difference between the Soviet MiG-29s and Su-27s available in Ukraine and modern Western planes is like the difference between a soldier with a pistol versus a soldier with an assault rifle with an optical sight, explains the commander of the Ghosts of Kiev Brigade of Valsilkiv.
Сучасний повітряний бій – це дальній ракетний бій.
A modern dogfight is a long-distance missile battle where missiles are launched from as far as 80 to 100 kilometers away. The plane fixes an aerial target from 150 to 200 kilometers. MiG-29, with its combat capabilities, doesn't allow for these combat tasks to be completed quite well at the moment, which is why we're in urgent need of Western aircrafts.
After long months of negotiations with Western partners, Ukraine managed to form an aviation coalition of allies. On February the 8th, 2023, during his visit to Great Britain, President Zelensky delivered a triumphant speech in the Houses of Parliament and gave the speaker a special gift.
Ось це шолом справжнього українського пілота. І він з найуспішніших наших асів. І він один з наших королів. А на його шоломі написано: «Ми маємо свободу. Дайте нам крила, щоб захистити її».
The American F-16 fighter was chosen as the base aviation combat platform. The Netherlands guaranteed to provide Ukraine with 42 F-16s of modern modifications. Denmark, too, provide 19 more. Our pilots have already begun training.
Літаків F-16, ефективність нашої роботи ще більше.
With F-16 fighters, our efficiency will grow even more, which we can't wait for, while still operating our MiG-29, Su-27, Su-25, Su-24.
Ми підготуємо всю необхідну базу.
We will prepare the foundation necessary for our aviation transitioning to go as fast and efficiently as can be. Our warriors have already proved they can master modern weapons so successfully nobody could even expect from us to. I am certain that it will go the same way with the planes.
Буде так само успішно.
All the captive downed aviators, Krasnoyartsev, Olovensky, Kozlov, Berechukov, and Sermikin had been exchanged by military intelligence for our defenders. The longest negotiations, lasting over a year, were about the exchange of the other 3 senior officers, Krystop, Kosaik, and Malov.
Тяжело переговоры продвигаются.
Встреча, не как героев уж точно.
MY family wrote that the negotiations are difficult and slow. Probably won't be a hero's welcome, but I think it won't be prison either. I feel neither hatred nor rage or anger. I don't expect any persecution. I hope that, first of all, my family is all right.
Regimental adjutants, Colonels Krystop and Kosaik, and Flight Commander Major Malov had been exchanged in the ratio of 1 to 15 captives.
Would you want to be on this territory again? No. Of course not.
Не хотите извиниться перед украинским народом?
Would you like to apologize to the people of Ukraine for everything you've done, everything your so-called motherland does?
В кавычках.
Don't want to? No, they don't.
On May the 6th, 2023, in exchange for 3 downed Russian pilots, Ukraine got back 45 defenders of Azovstal Guards from the Azov Regiment. They will never forget the pure joy of the first minutes back on home ground after the long, horrible and exhausting months of captivity were over.
Свіжі новини, ви багато пропустили.
Навіть не уявляю скільки.
За вас боровся, дуже боровся за вас, вся Україна за вас боролася.
Чесно, навіть. Спасибо. Нікому що до тебе.
Я не знаю, что ты загадала день рождения, но, короче, меня обменяли.
Слава Україні! Слава! Смерть ворогам! Україна! Понад усе!
This exclusive footage shows the result of a unique operation carried out by joint efforts of the military intelligence and the Department of Internal Security of National Police by the codename Sinitsia, the hijacking of a new Russian Mi-8 AMTSH helicopter with an armored cockpit.
Аккуратно! Топливо течет! Вышли!
The intelligence agents got their hands not only on the copter with the side number 62, but also on valuable papers and some classified technical equipment. This has already dealt a serious blow to the enemy's aviation, as it will be hard to recover from such a loss. The pilot in command, a 20-year-old captain, practically stole the helicopter, delivering it over the front line using a safe corridor provided by military intelligence.
I contacted the intelligence representatives of Ukraine, explained my situation, and they gave me this option and said they would guarantee my safety, new documents, money reward. We discussed all the details and started planning my flight. I explained my situation, and they gave me this option and said they would guarantee my safety, new documents, money reward. We discussed all the details and started planning my flight.
The pilot was wounded during the final stage of this complicated operation, but was given medical assistance in time.
Серега, того взяв, зав'язав і пішов.
Давайте так, ноги, грузимо каталку. Бігом! Цього забирай.
Давайте бігом забираємо, евакуація. По периметру стали. Відійшли на ту сторону.
I realized I was near the border. I gave them my coordinates, said let's try. I'm here nearby, and then made the decision. I crossed the border at a minimal altitude in the radio silence mode. Nobody knew where or what I was doing. For 3 to 4 days, nobody had any idea what had happened. So I crossed, landed, everything was good. They met me and explained everything.
Now the Russian helicopter pilot is safe and provides our military intelligence with valuable information on the enemy combat aviation, communication system and the airfield network. This well-organized and planned operation dealt the Russian aerospace forces a painful and humiliating blow.
The truth is right here. There are no fascists or Nazis here. I'm very sorry for what's going on now. The deaths, the blood, the tears. People are just killing each other, and that's it. This is what I realized and what I didn't want to do.
Soon after, the enemy Mi-8 helicopter, manufactured in 2016 and belonging to the 319th Separate Helicopter Regiment based in the Primorsky Krai of Russia, was redeployed from its landing site in Kharkiv region to safe territory. The pilot who hijacked the aircraft received all the security guarantees provided by law from Ukraine.
What's happening right now is simply the genocide of Ukrainian people, in Russian as well as Ukrainian. I did what I did so I won't aid in these crimes, because I know how this is going to end. Ukraine will definitely win this war, just because its people has united so much. Even if this wasn't the case before, they're so united now. The whole world is helping, because they understand that human life is to be valued above all.
This rare trophy has added to the military intelligence's aviation fleet. and the unique months-long operation of the Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine with the codename Sinister will undoubtedly go down in history, since it closely resembles the Diamond operation carried out by the Israeli Mossad in 1966. Back then, Israel managed to recruit an Iraqi pilot and steal the most modern Soviet MiG-21 fighter at the time with his help. The Ukrainian Sinitsa operation became the first one in this war, where we managed to capture a new combat-capable Russian aircraft, a combat helicopter, and the valuable equipment it had carried. And on top of that, we gained a young professional aviator.
Nobody wants this war. You'll see, Ukraine's victory is just a matter of time.
He realized in time the hopelessness and injustice of the aggressive war his country had started against Ukraine, and didn't want to become gun fodder because of the cannibalistic whims of the aggressor country's leaders. Now the helicopter captain encourages other Russian aviators to follow his lead.
Of course, if you do what I did, you won't regret a thing. You will be provided with everything for the rest of your life. You will get job offers from everywhere you want, whatever you want to be. You will open this bright world for yourself. And remember, you just don't know a lot and haven't seen how other people live. And when you see all of this, you will change your opinions completely.
This young pilot's unique and optimistic story shows all the other Russian pilots that in this war there is a real alternative to the inevitable death in the Ukrainian sky or the humiliating captivity on the ground. You can and should fly over to the other side of light and justice. Ukraine, as a civilized European country, will give such Russian soldiers all the guarantees provided by law, including financial compensation for handing over the combat aircraft. And Captain Kuzminov has already been given a chance for a new and fulfilling life and will surely be able to continue flying, but this time on the wings of truth and goodness.
Горят два самолета на нашем аэропорту Псковском. Атака, говорят, дронов. 021, нет, неизвестно. 021, прием. Находимся внутри борта. Ищем участок, пока ничего не наблюдаем, кроме задымления. Как понял? Вас понял.